Hey, black girl, got any stock tips for me? The billionaire's table exploded with laughter. Victor Hale leaned back, savoring the moment. Come on. They must teach investing between cleaning tables and pouring wine, or is money too complicated for your kind? Nearby diners snickered, whispered, shook their heads. The black waitress stood alone, surrounded by cruel smiles and cold stares. Not one person spoke up. They saw her as nothing, a servant, a target, someone beneath them in every way, or so they thought. None of them knew she'd spent 5 years waiting for this exact moment, tracking every failed prediction, every bad trade, every lie this billionaire ever told. In just a few minutes, every person in that dining room would watch his reputation crumble, destroyed by the black girl he had just humiliated. The Sterling Room sits on the 43rd floor of a glass tower in Manhattan's financial district. It's the kind of place where a single steak costs more than most people's car payments, where the wine list runs 60 pages and the cheapest bottle starts at $200. Dark wood paneling imported from English estates that had seen centuries of aristocratic dinners. Brass fixtures that have been polished by hand every single night for 3 decades. Leather chairs that whisper old money with every creak and groan. The air itself smells expensive, like aged beef and ambition, and deals being made over 18-year scotch. Like power-changing hands between courses. Chandeliers cast warm light over white tablecloths. Conversations hum at carefully modulated volumes, loud enough to be heard, quiet enough to maintain privacy. The kind of place where a handshake still means something and a broken promise can end careers. On any given Friday night, you'll find hedge fund managers celebrating billion-dollar quarters, private equity partners closing acquisitions that will make tomorrow's headlines, investment bankers expensing 4-figure dinners without a second thought or a glance at the bill. The kind of men who move markets with a phone call and never, not once, think about the people serving their food. Serena Adams had worked at the Sterling Room for 3 years. She was 32 years old. Natural hair pulled back in neat twists, moved through the dining room with practiced invisibility. That's the real skill when you think about it. Not carrying plates, not pouring wine, not memorizing complicated orders without writing them down. Becoming invisible. Anticipating needs before they're spoken. Refilling water glasses so smoothly that no one notices you were ever there. Serena was excellent at it. 3 years of practice. 3 years of perfecting the art of being furniture. 3 years of watching enormous wealth flow past her like a river she could never enter. She knew every regular's preferences. Which partners hated which other partners and should never be seated within eye line. Which CEOs had shellfish allergies that weren't in the system. Which billionaires had mistresses who shouldn't be mentioned in front of wives. Which tables tipped well and which ones left insults scrawled on receipts instead of gratuities. But serving rich men was never supposed to be her life. At 32, Serena Adams was supposed to be somewhere else entirely. She'd been 2 semesters away from graduating Howard University. Economics major. 3.8 GPA. The kind of student professors remember for years after they've graduated. Her advisor, Dr. Williams, had written in her recommendation letter, "Serena Adams is the most naturally gifted analyst I've encountered in 20 years of teaching. She doesn't just understand markets, she feels them. She sees patterns others miss. She has the rarest gift in finance, genuine intuition backed by rigorous methodology." That letter was still saved on her laptop, yellowing digitally in a folder she couldn't bring herself to delete. She'd never gotten to use it, because then her mother got sick. Lupus. The autoimmune kind that attacks kidneys and joints and hope with equal cruelty. The kind that flares without warning and retreats without explanation. The kind that requires specialists who don't take payment plans. Medications that cost more per month than Serena's entire semester of tuition. Insurance covered some of it. Not enough. Never enough. So Serena did what daughters do. She withdrew from Howard 2 semesters before graduation, moved back to Atlanta, Worked 3 jobs simultaneously while Mama stabilized. Morning shift at a coffee shop starting at 5 a.m., afternoon shifts doing data entry for a law firm, weekend nights bartending until 2 in the morning. 2 years of that. 2 years of exhaustion and worry and watching her dreams recede in the rearview mirror like a city she was driving away from. Then a friend in New York said the tips were better there. The real money was in Manhattan, serving the people who had more than they could ever spend. So Serena moved north. That was 7 years ago. Now she sends 70% of everything she earns back home. Mama's prescriptions. The ones that keep her kidneys functioning, that keep the inflammation down, that keep her alive and relatively pain-free. Costs more than a used car every single month. And her younger sister Keisha's tuition at Spelman. First year, pre-med, carrying all the dreams Serena had to set down. Every time Serena signs a check to send home, she thinks about the degree she didn't get, the career she didn't start, the doors that closed before she could even knock on them. But here's the thing about Serena Adams. The thing nobody at the Sterling Room knew. The thing nobody would have believed if she'd told them. She never stopped learning. Every night after her shift, after her feet throbbed and her back ached and her hands smelled like other people's expensive food, she studied. Not casually, obsessively. Bloomberg articles, SEC filings, earnings call transcripts, Federal Reserve minutes, macroeconomic analyses from research firms that charged $10,000 for subscriptions she found creative ways to access for free. She'd taken the CFA Level 1 practice exam online, scored 89%. Could have passed the real certification easily. Probably could have passed Level 2 as well. Couldn't afford the $400 registration fee. She'd applied to 62 entry-level finance jobs over 3 years, analyst positions, research assistants, even administrative roles at investment firms, anything to get a foot inside the door. 62 applications, 62 rejections. Most firms never bothered with an interview. Her resume showed hospitality experience and an incomplete degree. Straight to the trash. The few that did interview her always said the same thing with the same apologetic smile. You'd be a great culture fit for maybe a different department, or we're looking for candidates with more traditional backgrounds. She knew what that meant. She'd heard it enough times to stop pretending otherwise. So Serena channeled her frustration into something else. Something that started as anger and slowly transformed into obsession. Something that felt like power, even if no one else knew it existed. She built a database, a master spreadsheet she titled Wall Street's Worst Calls. Over 50 fund managers tracked. Every public prediction they made, on CNBC, Bloomberg, in shareholder letters, on Twitter. Color-coded by outcome. Green for correct, red for wrong. There was a lot of red. But one name had its own dedicated tab. 5 separate subsheets. 3 years of meticulous documentation. Victor Hale, founder and CEO of Hale Capital Partners. Billionaire. CNBC's favorite talking head. The man who appeared on financial television 48 times in 5 years, always confident, always certain, always telling America exactly what to buy and sell. Why Victor specifically? Because 3 years ago, he'd said something that Serena never forgot. A CNBC anchor had asked about diversity in finance. Why so few women, so few people of color, in senior positions? Victor's response came with a practiced smile. Look, I'm all for diversity, but this isn't charity work. You can't just hand people opportunities because of what they look like. Merit matters. If they can't compete, they can't compete. Serena watched that clip 3 times. Let his words sink deep into her bones. Merit matters. If they can't compete, they can't compete. Fine, she thought. Let's examine your track record, Mr. Merritt. She started his file that night, updated it every Sunday. Never missed a week for 3 years. Girl, why you always on your phone? Janelle, another server, catching Serena in the break room. Serena smiled. Research. Research for what? You finally applying somewhere? Not yet, just keeping score. It was 8:48 p.m. when the energy in the Sterling room shifted. Serena felt it before she saw anything. The way conversations softened. The way the hostess straightened her posture. The way the kitchen expediter muttered something urgent into his headset. Victor Hale had arrived. Victor Hale walked into the Sterling room like he owned the building. He probably did own stock in the company that owned the building. Men like Victor owned pieces of everything. That was how real wealth worked. Not in things you could see, but in percentages of things everyone else used. 62 years old, silver hair swept back from a tanned forehead. The kind of tan that comes from winters in Aspen and summers in the Hamptons. The permanent bronze of a man who had never worried about paying an electric bill. A charcoal suit that cost more than Serena's annual rent. A Patek Philippe watch glinting at his wrist. She knew enough about watches now to recognize it. $250,000, sitting casually on his arm. He moved with the permanent confidence of a man who hadn't heard the word no in 3 decades, hadn't had anyone disagree with him to his face in almost as long. The world rearranged itself around Victor Hale, and he'd long ago stopped noticing the rearranging. 5 men trailed behind him. Associates. Sycophants. The loyal entourage of a billionaire who surrounded himself only with people who agreed with him. They laughed at his jokes before he finished telling them. They nodded at observations that weren't insightful. They provided the constant validation that men like Victor needed like oxygen. They were headed for the corner booth. Best table in the house. Reserved under Victor's name every Friday night, whether he came or not. The restaurant kept it empty for him, turning away other customers, just in case. A busboy passed Serena, leaned close. His voice was barely a whisper. That's Victor Hale. Hedge fund guy. Tips like shit. Last time he was here, he called Maria the help to her face. Made her cry in the walk-in cooler for 20 minutes. Serena's manager materialized at her elbow. Table 12 is yours tonight. Be professional. Smile. He's one of our most important clients. She nodded, straightened her apron, picked up her notepad. Walking toward that corner booth, she had no idea what the next 2 hours would bring. No idea that tonight would change everything. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Sterling room. Can I start you with some drinks? Or would you like a few minutes with the menu? Victor Hale didn't look up. He was mid-story. Something about a CEO who'd made a catastrophically stupid acquisition. His voice dripped with contempt for this unnamed executive who dared to make a decision Victor disagreed with. His table laughed on cue, that rehearsed chuckle of men who know exactly when they're supposed to be amused. Serena waited. 10 seconds, 15, 20, 30. She stood there, notepad ready, professional smile fixed in place, invisible, like part of the furniture. Exactly as she'd been trained, exactly as the Sterling room expected its servers to be, present when needed, invisible otherwise. Finally, Victor glanced up. His eyes moved over her. Not through her, over her. The way you'd assess a lamp you were considering replacing. The way you'd look at a piece of equipment to determine if it was functioning properly. Wine list. He snapped his fingers twice. Sharp. Impatient. The reserve list, not the regular one. Of course, sir. I'll bring it right away. She turned to leave, but Victor wasn't finished. Hey. He was addressing his associate now, but his voice carried, deliberately. He meant for her to hear. Men like Victor always meant for people like Serena to hear. At least this place finally got some diversity. Makes the liberals happy, right? His table chuckled. That obligatory sound of men agreeing with their boss. Serena's face didn't change. 3 years of practice. I'll be right back with the reserve list, sir. At the sommelier station, she allowed herself 3 deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The technique she'd developed for moments like this. The survival mechanism that let her function in spaces where people looked through her. This is the job. Absorb it. Move on. Collect the tip. Pay Mama's bills. She returned with the leather-bound reserve list. 60 pages of wines most people would never taste. Bottles that cost more than some people's monthly salaries. Victor made a production of selecting. His finger traced down the pages with theatrical consideration, past the $500 bottles, too cheap, finally stopping on a Bordeaux priced at $6.20. The Chateau Margaux, he announced, butchering the French pronunciation. 2015. Serena didn't correct him. That wasn't her job. Excellent choice, sir. A beautiful vintage. She retrieved the bottle, presented it properly, label facing him, vintage visible, opened it with the precise, silent movements she'd mastered. Not a sound from the cork, not a drip on the tablecloth. Poured a small taste into his glass. Victor swirled, sniffed, nodded without actually tasting. Fine. Pour for the table. The evening progressed. Courses came and went. Conversations rose and fell. Victor held court at his corner booth, regaling his associates with stories of his own brilliance. Deals he'd closed, competitors he'd crushed, predictions he'd made that everyone else had doubted, markets he'd timed perfectly, fortunes he'd built while others floundered. In Victor's telling, he was the smartest person in every room he'd ever entered. A visionary, a prophet of the markets, someone who saw what others couldn't. But Serena noticed something curious. Victor kept glancing at her. Not the way some men looked at women. This was different. It was irritation, annoyance, a growing displeasure that she couldn't quite explain. She wasn't nervous in his presence, wasn't flustered by his wealth or fame, wasn't intimidated by his sharp comments or his billion-dollar reputation. She simply did her job with quiet competence. And Victor Hale was not accustomed to being unimpressive to anyone. The moment everything changed came between the second and third courses. Serena was refilling water glasses, moving around the table with practiced efficiency, when Victor waved her over. That particular gesture wealthy men use, the one that says, "Your entire existence is defined by my needs," the one that expects immediate compliance without question. "Hey, what's your name?" "Serena, sir." Serena. He rolled the name around like wine he was tasting, deciding if he approved. Pretty name. His table was watching now, already smiling. They recognized that tone. They'd seen this show before. "Hey, Serena." Victor leaned back, playing to his audience. "Maybe you can help me out. I need some stock tips." He paused. Let the setup breathe. The timing of a man who'd told this joke before. They must teach that in wherever you people go to school, right? Another beat. What was it? Community college? Trade school? The table exploded with laughter. Victor basked in it, warmed himself in their amusement like sunlight. Serena stood perfectly still. 1 breath, 2, 3. She felt eyes from nearby tables. Some diners looked uncomfortable. Others smirked. All of them waiting to see how the help would respond to being reminded of her place. One of Victor's associates, younger than the others, seated at the far end, was staring at his plate. He wasn't laughing. "I'll check on your appetizers, Mr. Hale." Serena turned, walked away, back straight, chin level, the posture of a woman who had learned to absorb humiliation without letting it show. But inside her mind, numbers were running, his numbers, every wrong prediction, every failed trade, every arrogant call the market had punished. She knew them all. In the kitchen, Serena's hands finally trembled. She gripped the stainless steel prep counter, forcing herself to breathe. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Steam rose from the line. Somewhere, a chef was yelling about timing. The controlled chaos of a Friday night service. Normal sounds. Normal chaos. But nothing felt normal. Janelle found her there. What happened? Janelle's voice was sharp with concern. You look like you've seen a ghost. It's nothing. Serena shook her head. Just rich people being rich people. Janelle's eyes narrowed. Was it table 12? Serena nodded. Victor Hale. Girl, that man is poison. You know what he did to Maria last year? Called her the Mexican right to her face, in front of a full table. 8 people heard it. Made her cry in the walk-in cooler for 20 minutes. What did management do? Nothing. Janelle's laugh was bitter. He drops 15, 20 grand here every month. Management doesn't do anything about men like that. They just tell us to smile wider, be more accommodating. Think about the tip. Serena thought about asking to swap tables. She could. Janelle might take it. She had 2 kids and a landlord who didn't accept excuses. But Victor's table was a $3,000 check, minimum. 20% of that would cover Mama's prescriptions for 6 weeks. Would mean Keisha didn't have to worry about textbooks next semester. She couldn't afford principals tonight. I'm fine, she said. I've handled worse. She hadn't. But she went back anyway. The next 90 minutes were a masterclass in casual cruelty. It started with the steak. This is medium, Victor's voice carried across the dining room. He held up a slice of meat on his fork like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. I specifically ordered medium rare. Any competent server knows the difference. Can you tell the difference? Or... He let the implication dangle. His table watched with amused anticipation. I apologize, sir. I'll have the kitchen prepare a new one immediately. You do that, and quickly. Time is money, even yours. She returned with a fresh steak. Perfect temperature. Pink center fading to brown at the edges. Exactly as ordered. Exactly as it should be. Victor cut into it. Chewed slowly. Said nothing. No acknowledgement. No thank you. That would have meant recognizing her as a person rather than a function. Then came the commentary. Victor was speaking to his table, but his voice carried. Always carried. Serena understood now. He wanted her to hear everything. That was part of the entertainment for him. You know what I don't understand about this whole DEI conversation? He gestured vaguely with his wine glass. Representation of what, exactly? If you can't perform at the level required, you can't perform. Period. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter what zip code you grew up in. Results matter. Merit matters. One of his associates shifted uncomfortably. Victor, come on. What? I'm not saying anything controversial. Victor shrugged. I'm sure she's perfectly competent at this. He swept his hand to indicate the restaurant, the tables, the invisible machinery of service. This is fine work, honest work. Someone has to do it. This is her level. Serena was 3 feet away, refilling a water glass. She heard every syllable. This is her level. The words lodged somewhere deep, joined the others she'd collected over the years. 62 rejection letters. 1,000 small dismissals. Know your place. Stay in your lane. We're looking for a different profile. This is your level. She kept pouring. Face serene. Professional. The mask she'd perfected. Then Victor escalated. He picked up his cloth napkin, looked directly at Serena, and dropped it on the floor. Oops. He didn't reach for it, just sat there, waiting. His associates watching, the entire corner of the restaurant watching. A test, a power play. A reminder of who held power and who didn't. Serena bent down, retrieved the napkin, placed it on the table beside his plate. I'll bring you a fresh one, sir. See? Victor smiled at his associates, magnanimous in victory. Excellent service. They train them well here. Them. They. The words of a man who didn't see individuals. Only categories. Only functions. Only levels. From across the dining room, Serena felt eyes on her. The elderly woman at table 6, celebrating an anniversary with her husband, was watching with undisguised horror. When Serena glanced her way, the woman mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." Serena gave a tiny nod. Professional acknowledgement. Kept moving. There was another observer she hadn't noticed. Corner table near the window. A black man in his late 40s. Expensive suit. Not flashy, just quality. The kind of clothing that announced itself through fit and fabric rather than labels. He was dining alone, watching everything with an expression that revealed nothing. Taking it all in. Processing. Serena didn't know his name. Didn't know he'd been observing her handle nearly an hour of degradation without once losing composure. Didn't know opinions were already forming behind those careful eyes. The manager appeared at her elbow. Voice low, apologetic and stern simultaneously. "Mr. Hale mentioned you've been cold." He sounded pained. "He's one of our most valuable clients, Serena. Is there a problem I should know about?" "No problem at all." She kept her voice even, neutral. "I'll be warmer." She returned to table 12, smiled bigger, asked more solicitous questions about the wine, the food, the evening, laughed at Victor's jokes even when they weren't funny, which was most of them. Performed warmth like her livelihood depended on it, because it did. Around 10 o'clock, Victor waved her over one final time. He'd consumed enough wine to feel expansive, generous, ready for entertainment. "Serena, come here." She approached. "I feel bad about earlier." He didn't look sorry. Men like Victor never looked sorry. "That joke about the stock tips, that was mean of me." She waited, said nothing. Experience had taught her that silence was often the safest response. "So let me give you a real chance." He leaned back, performing for his associates. "Give me one stock tip. Seriously. Something you'd actually invest in if you had money to invest." His table was grinning. "Entertainment time. Unless you can't think of anything?" Victor's smile sharpened. "That's okay. Not everyone is built for this kind of thinking. Some people are meant to serve. That's just reality." He let that settle into the air between them. Nothing wrong with that. Serena stood there, notepad in hand. 3 years of research in her memory. 62 rejection letters seared into her heart. Mama's prescription costs burning a hole in her pocket. "You people," echoing in her skull. She could do the safe thing. The smart thing. Just say, "I don't follow the market, sir." Laugh softly. Shrug. Survive the shift. Go home. Pay the bills. Swallow the humiliation like she'd swallowed 1,000 others. This is what the job demanded. This is what being a black woman in spaces like this always demanded. Smile. Nod. Absorb. Survive. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hale." The words came out steady. Practiced. "I don't really follow." "That's what I thought." Victor leaned back into his chair, satisfaction spreading across his face like sunrise over water. "See? I wasn't being mean earlier. I was being realistic." He waved his hand in dismissal. "Know your place, sweetheart. There's no shame in knowing your place." Know your place. The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd heard them before. Different words, same weight. 62 times. Not a culture fit. We're looking for a different profile, perhaps a different department. Know your place. Something shifted inside Serena Adams. She thought about her mother, standing at the apartment door the day Serena left for Howard, eyes shining with tears and pride. "You're going to be something, baby. Something big." She thought about her sister. Keisha's voice on the phone last week, bubbling with excitement about her organic chemistry class. I'm going to be a doctor, Serena, because you made it possible. She thought about the file. 5 years of Victor Hale's failures. Every blown prediction, every wrong trade, every confident pronouncement the market had humiliated. All of it sitting in a spreadsheet on her laptop that no one would ever see. Unless, if not now, when? If not her, who? She was never going to get a seat at their table. 62 closed doors had made that clear. But she could show them, just once, that the person they dismissed knew more than they ever would. Actually, Mr. Hale, Victor's smirk wavered, almost imperceptibly, but she caught it. You asked for a stock tip. She set down her notepad, slow, deliberate, like setting down a weapon she no longer needed. I'll do you one better. She looked him directly in the eyes. I'll give you an audit. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Victor blinked. An audit? He was still smiling, but something had shifted. A hairline crack in his certainty. This wasn't how the script went. Waitresses didn't use words like audit. What exactly are you talking about? Serena stepped closer to the table. Not servile anymore. Not deferential. Present. You've appeared on CNBC 48 times in the last 5 years. Her voice was calm, measured, almost pleasant. You've published 19 shareholder letters, filed 23 Form 4s with the SEC, made 84 public predictions about markets, sectors, and individual stocks. She let that settle. One of the associates set down his fork. The tiny clink of metal on porcelain sounded loud in the sudden quiet. Victor laughed, but the sound came out wrong. Uncertain. Have you been stalking me? That's a little... I've been doing research. Serena's tone didn't change. The kind of work you pay analysts $300,000 a year to do. She paused. Except I did it better, and I did it for free. The dining room had gone quiet. Tables nearby had stopped their own conversations. Heads were turning. You asked me to prove I understand stocks. Serena clasped her hands in front of her, the posture of someone about to deliver a presentation. Let me prove something more interesting instead. I know everything about your stocks, Mr. Hale. Every public call you've made, every position you've disclosed, every prediction you tweeted and then deleted when the market proved you wrong. Victor's jaw tightened. Every mistake. All of them. This is ridiculous. Victor's voice rose slightly. You're await 84 predictions. 5 years. Serena cut him off. Smooth. Clean. Would you like to know your accuracy rate, or should I skip straight to the highlights? Victor's face had lost color. But men like Victor didn't back down. Couldn't back down. Not in front of an audience. Fine. He crossed his arms. Enlighten us. Your accuracy rate on public predictions is 29%. The number hung in the air. A coin flip gives you 50%. A dart-throwing monkey would outperform you significantly. Someone at a nearby table inhaled sharply. Victor, that's absurd. Where are you? Let's walk through it category by category. Serena's tone was almost professorial now, like a lecturer addressing students. Equities first, then macro calls, then crypto, then the trades you made with your investors' actual money. She tilted her head slightly. Sound fair? No one answered. Serena continued. March 2023, CNBC Squawk Box, 7:15 a.m. Eastern. You called NVIDIA, quote, the most overvalued stock in America. You said AI was a bubble. Compared it to pets.com. Recommended viewers short the stock at $480. Victor's expression flickered. NVIDIA closed yesterday at $892. That's an 86% move against your call. Anyone who followed your advice lost nearly half their investment. Anyone who shorted based on your recommendation got destroyed. One of the associates was staring at Serena like she'd grown wings. August 2020. You shorted Tesla at 450 pre-split. Called Elon Musk, your exact words, a con man running a car company on tweets and dreams. Predicted the stock would collapse below 200 by Christmas. Said it was the easiest short of the decade. She let that breathe. It reached 1,200 by November. You covered your short at the worst possible moment. That single trade cost your fund $23 million. I read your quarterly letter. You blamed irrational market exuberance. But the market wasn't irrational. Your analysis was incomplete. That was Victor started. January 2021. Serena didn't let him finish. GameStop. You went on television and called retail investors dumb money about to learn an expensive lesson. You took a long position at 340, expecting a squeeze to 600. Called it generational wealth transfer to smart money. She paused. Then Robinhood halted trading. You panic sold at 112, $14 million loss. Your quarterly letter blamed unprecedented market manipulation. But the real story was in Reddit threads you never bothered to read. The dumb money saw something you didn't. The associate who hadn't laughed at Victor's joke was doing calculations in his head. You could see it in his eyes, putting numbers together. 2019, Apple. You called it a phone company with no innovation left. Said Tim Cook was coasting on Steve Jobs' legacy. Advised your investors to sell and never look back. Apple is up 240% since that call. Your investors who listened left generational wealth on the table. This is cherry-picked, Victor tried again. I'm being comprehensive, Mr. Hale. Serena's expression hadn't changed. Still calm, still professional. You asked for this. Let's continue with macro. March 2020. The week the market bottomed. You appeared on television and announced, I'm quoting directly, "This virus is a nothing burger, completely overblown. The market is panicking over a bad flu. Buy the dip now or regret it forever." She paused. The market fell another 20% that week. You were margin called on March 18th. That's documented in your 13F filing, public record. Anyone can look it up. Someone at a nearby table had their phone out, recording. December 2021. You declared the Fed would never raise rates above 2%. Called anyone predicting otherwise economically illiterate. Said the Fed was too afraid of crashing the economy to raise rates meaningfully. Serena tilted her head. Rates reached 5.5%. Your bond portfolio remains underwater, down 31% as of your most recent quarterly disclosure. Victor's face was cycling through colors, red to white to red again. 2022. Oil futures. You described it as the easiest trade of my career. Loaded up before the midterm elections, predicting prices would spike. Then the administration released strategic reserves. You lost 28% in 11 days. Easy trade. The dining room had fallen completely silent. Even the ambient noise seemed muted. Staff had stopped moving. Other tables had stopped eating. Everyone was watching. Now, crypto. Serena's voice carried a hint of something, almost amusement. My personal favorite category. December 2021. Bitcoin at 65,000. You told Bloomberg it would reach 150,000 by summer 2022. Called it digital gold. Said anyone not holding Bitcoin was betting against the future of money. It crashed to 16,000. You quietly closed your crypto fund. Didn't mention that development in your year-end letter to investors. Didn't issue a mea culpa. Just silence. Victor was gripping the edge of the table now. November 2022. 1 week before FTX collapsed. You tweeted, then deleted, Sam Bankman-Fried is the future of finance. Anyone not investing with FTX is missing the boat. You called him the smartest person in crypto. Serena's voice dropped slightly. The internet has a long memory, Mr. Hale. Screenshots are forever. Someone archived that tweet within minutes. One of Victor's associates had his face in his hands. But let's step back. Serena straightened. Individual mistakes happen to everyone. Even the best investors get calls wrong. What matters is the aggregate picture, the track record over time. That's what you always emphasize on television, the long-term results. Over the last 5 years, Hale Capital has underperformed the S&P 500 by 34%. The number landed like a stone in still water. 34%. You charge 2 and 20, 2% management fee, 20% of any profits, for performance that a free Vanguard index fund beats every single year without exception. Your investors are paying premium fees for below-market returns. Her voice was almost gentle now. Your investors would have made more money doing literally nothing, putting their money in an index fund and going on vacation. Victor found his voice. These numbers are, this is, and here's something that isn't public yet. That got everyone's attention. The entire restaurant seemed to lean forward. 3 of your largest institutional investors, pension funds from Ohio, Michigan, and California, have submitted redemption notices. That's $340 million exiting your fund in January. Teachers' pensions, firefighters' retirement funds. They've seen enough. Victor went pale. How do you... Due diligence works both ways, Mr. Hale. I know people who know people. Information flows in multiple directions. She paused. One more beat. Oh, and that biotech position you were discussing earlier tonight? The one you're extremely long on? mRNA therapeutics? The one you called a sure thing? Victor had mentioned it during dinner, bragging about his genius analysis. The FDA rejected their Phase 3 trial last Tuesday. Embargo lifts Monday morning. The stock will open down 45%. Maybe more. She watched comprehension dawn on his face. I hope you have a stop-loss in place. Based on your historical pattern, you probably don't. One of the associates grabbed his phone, started typing frantically. Victor, she's right. His voice was strained. There's chatter online about the biotech. People on the forums are saying, shut up! Serena clasped her hands. The posture of someone concluding a formal presentation. 84 public predictions, 24 correct, a 29% hit rate. Yet you appear on television every week telling millions of Americans what to do with their money, taking their trust, taking their savings, based on a track record that wouldn't pass a basic performance review. She looked directly at him. You asked me for a stock tip, Mr. Hale. Here it is. She stepped closer. Don't confuse confidence for competence. The words dropped into the silence like stones. And don't assume the black woman pouring your wine attended community college. Her voice didn't waver. I completed 3 years at Howard University. Economics, 3.8 GPA. I was 2 semesters from graduating when I had to leave. I left because my mother got sick, not because I couldn't compete. I can compete just fine. She let that settle. You said on national television that merit matters. You're absolutely right. Merit does matter. It matters more than you know. She tilted her head. So, why are you still on television? Victor's mouth worked. Nothing emerged. You asked where my people go to school. We attend the same universities you did. We read the same SEC filings. We perform the same analysis. The difference is we don't receive second chances when we're wrong. We don't get to fail upward. Serena's voice dropped, soft, but in the absolute silence of that dining room, every word carried. You've been wrong 71% of the time, and you're still a billionaire, still on television, still giving advice. She straightened. That's not merit, Mr. Hale. That's a different kind of privilege. Serena finished speaking. The Sterling room held its breath. 1 second of silence, 2, 3, 4, 5. The quiet was so absolute you could hear ice shifting in water glasses across the room, the distant hum of ventilation. A nervous swallow from one of Victor's associates, the soft creak of leather as someone shifted in their chair. Victor Hale sat frozen. His face had cycled through crimson, chalk white, and settled on an ashen gray that made him look 10 years older. His hands, those confident, gesturing hands that had commanded boardrooms and television studios, lay flat on the white tablecloth like things that had died. His associates wouldn't meet his eyes. One stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Another pretended to study his phone, scrolling without seeing. The youngest one, the one who hadn't laughed at the original joke, was looking at Serena with something between shock and wonder. Then someone started clapping. It was the woman from table 6, the anniversary couple. She rose from her chair, which in a place like the Sterling room simply wasn't done, and began to applaud. Slow, deliberate, each clap a statement. Her husband stood with her, joined in. Then a man in the corner. The black man who'd been dining alone. Raymond Brooks, though Serena didn't yet know his name, stood and added his applause to theirs. Then another table, and another. Like a wave building far offshore, it rolled through the dining room. The Sterling room, that temple of old money and older manners, where discretion was currency and servers existed to be invisible, filled with applause. For a waitress, for Serena Adams. Some diners stood, the nervous couple on their first date. A group of women celebrating a promotion. Even certain regulars, the kind who usually pretended staff didn't exist, were on their feet. They were applauding for her. Victor's corner booth sat in stunned isolation. Islands of humiliation in a sea of appreciation. One associate was frantically texting, damage control protocols already activating. Another had his face buried in his hands. A third was signaling desperately for the check, wanting only to escape. Victor exploded from his chair. The legs scraped against hardwood with an ugly sound. His face had gone from gray to purple. "This is..." His voice cracked. He tried again, louder, trying to project the authority he'd always possessed. "This is harassment, slander. I'll sue you. I'll sue this restaurant. I'll have your job. I'll destroy your career before it even starts. I'll..." "Sue her for what?" The voice came from across the room. A silver-haired man at another table. The kind who probably ran his own company, who recognized real capability when he saw it. "For reading your public SEC filings? That's not slander. That's research." Laughter rippled through the dining room. Not the sycophantic chuckles Victor was accustomed to inspiring. Not the obligatory sounds of people humoring a powerful man. Something else entirely. They were laughing at him. "Hey, Victor!" Another voice, another table. "What's NVIDIA trading at these days?" More laughter, louder now. "Wasn't Bitcoin supposed to be at $150,000 by now?" Someone else. The laughter built. Victor's composure shattered completely. He grabbed his wallet, ripped out a fistful of $100 bills, and hurled them onto the table. They scattered across the white linen like autumn leaves. "We're leaving." He directed this at his associates, but the command in his voice had evaporated. "Now!" They scrambled to gather their things. Coats, phones, briefcases, collected with the hurried, shameful movements of people desperate to escape a scene they wanted no part of. As they moved toward the exit, Victor turned back one final time. His finger pointed at Serena, shaking visibly. "You think this changes anything?" His voice was too loud, too shrill. "You're still just a..." He stopped. The room was watching. Every eye, every phone camera, every witness ready to capture whatever came next. The silence dared him to finish that sentence. He didn't. Victor Hale turned and walked out of the Sterling room without another word. His entourage trailed behind, none of them meeting anyone's eyes. All except one. The associate who hadn't laughed at the original joke. He paused at the door, turned back, found Serena's eyes across the crowded room. He nodded, once. A small gesture of respect from an unexpected quarter. Then he was gone. The applause had faded, replaced by excited conversation. The buzz of strangers talking to strangers, united by what they'd witnessed. Tables were comparing notes, sharing what they'd recorded, exchanging contact information. The story was already spreading. It would be on social media before midnight. Serena stood in the center of it all. Her hands were trembling now. The adrenaline she'd held at bay for 15 minutes was flooding through her system. Her heart pounded against her ribs. The older woman from table 6 approached, touched Serena's arm gently. "That," she said, eyes glistening, "was the most remarkable thing I've ever witnessed in 40 years of dining in Manhattan. That man has terrorized staff at every restaurant in this city. Everyone knows it. No one ever did anything about it. Until tonight." "Thank you," Serena managed. "No." The woman squeezed her arm firmly. "Thank you. For everyone who ever had to smile through treatment like that. For everyone who had to swallow their dignity to pay their bills. Thank you." The manager appeared at Serena's elbow. His expression was a complicated mixture of shock, fear, admiration, and calculation. The politics of the moment were clearly overwhelming him. "Serena, I don't know what to say." "Am I fired?" He blinked, looked around the room, at the diners still buzzing with excitement, at the phones that had captured everything, at the faces watching to see how management would respond to this unprecedented moment. "I don't think I could fire you if I wanted to." He almost smiled. "Half the restaurant is asking for your contact information. The other half is asking if you do private consulting." For the first time all evening, Serena felt something release in her chest. It might have been relief. It might have been something much larger than that. The remainder of the shift passed like a fever dream. Serena completed her service automatically, taking orders, delivering checks, moving between tables with the muscle memory of 3 years of practice, the mechanical motions of a job she'd done thousands of times. But everything had changed. Every table she approached, someone wanted to shake her hand, ask her name, tell her she was brilliant. A woman in her 50s pressed a business card into Serena's palm. "If you ever want to discuss opportunities in asset management, call me." A man in investment banking asked if she'd ever considered equity research. Another offered to connect her with his firm's HR department. She tucked the cards into her apron pocket. There were 9 by the time the shift ended. In the break room, Janelle grabbed her shoulders. "Girl, girl!" Her eyes were wide as searchlights. "What did you do out there? The entire restaurant is talking about nothing else? Someone told me you made Victor Hale actually run away, like physically run." "He didn't run exactly." "Close enough. Fast walk of shame, same energy." Janelle pulled her into a fierce hug. "I always knew you were smart. I didn't know you were like sniper smart, assassin smart, secret weapon smart." Serena laughed, genuine, surprised. The laugh of someone releasing tension they'd held for hours. "I just answered his question." "You destroyed that man's whole reputation." Janelle stepped back, shaking her head with wonder. "In like 5 minutes, in front of everyone, with receipts." 5 years, Serena smiled. 5 years of preparation, 5 minutes of delivery. Girl, that's the most savage thing I've ever heard. And I grew up in the Bronx. She was gathering her belongings, coat, bag, phone with its precious spreadsheets, when someone appeared at the break room entrance. The black man who'd been dining alone. The one who'd been second to start clapping. Up close, she could assess him properly. Late 40s, distinguished bearing. a suit that announced quality through craftsmanship rather than labels. He carried himself like a man who'd earned his position rather than inherited it, someone who knew what it meant to work for everything. He held a business card between two fingers. Serena Adams. She hadn't given him her name. I'm Raymond Brooks, Chief Investment Officer at Cornerstone Capital. We manage approximately $8 billion in assets. She took the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, legitimate. I've sat through roughly 1,000 investment presentations in my career. Raymond's voice was warm but direct. Analyst pitches, fund manager reviews, board presentations. Maybe more than 1,000, honestly. It blurs together after a while. He paused. What you delivered tonight was more compelling than any of them. Better sourced, better presented, better timing, better everything. She didn't know how to respond. Waited. I have a junior analyst position available, entry level on paper. We have to start somewhere for compliance reasons. He smiled slightly. But based on what I witnessed, you'll be running your own portfolio within 18 months. Maybe sooner if you're as good as I think you are. Serena's breath caught. We fully sponsor CFA certification for all analysts. Comprehensive benefits package. The kind that actually covers things. The kind that matters. He paused meaningfully. Your mother's medications would be covered. She looked up sharply. How do you know about my mother? I don't. Raymond's expression was kind, understanding. But I recognize someone fighting for more than themselves. When the stakes are personal. When it's not about ego or revenge, it's about necessity, about family, about proving something that should never have needed proving. He met her eyes steadily. And I recognize what it looks like when someone's been systematically underestimated their entire life. I've lived that experience myself. Serena held the card. Such a small thing. Such a massive thing. 62 closed doors, and now possibly an open one. Why me? You know nothing about me except what you observed tonight. I know you tracked a billionaire's failures for 5 years. That's not anger, that's discipline. That's commitment. That's the kind of focus most people can't sustain for 5 weeks, let alone 5 years. He nodded toward the dining room, toward the door Victor had fled through. And you waited for precisely the right moment to deploy that information. That's patience, strategy, timing. Those are the rarest qualities in finance. He stepped back. The technical knowledge I can teach. What you already possess, I can't. Some things can't be learned. They can only be recognized. Serena looked at the card again. Cornerstone Capital. A real address, a real opportunity, a real door. Can I think about it? Of course. Don't think too long, though. Raymond smiled. That biotech prediction will be everywhere by Monday morning. You may have competing offers by then. He turned to leave, paused at the door. For what it's worth, Serena, you were the smartest person in that room tonight. You've probably been the smartest person in most rooms you've ever been in. Now everyone knows what was always true. He walked out. Serena stood holding the business card, the weight of possibility in her hand. 4 months later. The elevator doors opened on the 44th floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. Serena Adams stepped out. She wore a blazer now, real professional shoes instead of the non-slip kitchen clogs she'd lived in for 3 years. A badge hung around her neck. Cornerstone Capital. Serena Adams, junior analyst. Her desk waited by a window with a view of the city she'd served for 3 years from ground level. A real desk, with a nameplate, and a Bloomberg terminal glowing with market data. The same data she used to access through workarounds and free trials. Now it was at her fingertips, paid for, legitimate. Pinned above her monitor, a single photograph. Keisha at Spelman, white coat ceremony, grinning with her whole heart. Serena still maintained Wall Street's worst calls. Old habits. But now she updated it during lunch breaks, between research assignments. Now she did it from a Bloomberg terminal, at her own desk, on the 44th floor, looking down at the city that had looked down on her. The video from that night had traveled far. 4.8 million views across platforms. Waitress destroys hedge fund billionaire with receipts. The headlines wrote themselves. Financial Twitter had crowned her the Auditor. Someone created a remix with dramatic music. Another made an animated version. Her face had been everywhere for weeks. Victor Hale's fund was down 19% since that evening. The biotech crashed precisely as she'd predicted, 46% when markets opened Monday. 3 additional institutional investors had pulled their capital. The pension funds she'd mentioned, all 3 had confirmed their exits. CNBC quietly stopped inviting him on air. No announcement. Just silence. The worst thing that could happen to a man like Victor, not scandal, irrelevance. Her phone buzzed. Mama. Baby, I saw you on the news again. Her mother's voice crackled with warmth and wonder. Some man in a suit was talking about your market analysis. I didn't understand a single word of what he was saying. A pause. But I understood they respect you now. Finally. Serena leaned back in her chair, gazed out at the Manhattan skyline. They're starting to, Mama. Your father always said you were the smartest one in any room. He just didn't know which room yet. Serena closed her eyes, let herself remember him, his quiet faith, his unwavering certainty in her, the way he used to look at her when she showed him her report cards, like she was proof that everything good was possible. That sounds exactly like him. It was exactly him. Her mother laughed softly. Now when are you coming home to visit? Keisha asks about you every single day. Next month. Flight's already booked. Good. I'm making your favorite. Don't argue, I'm making it. They talked for a few more minutes. Normal things. Easy things. The kind of conversation Serena had dreamed about for 7 years. The kind where money wasn't the first concern or the last. Where she didn't have to calculate whether she could afford both groceries and the electric bill. After she hung up, Serena looked out the window. Somewhere below, the Sterling Room continued serving $400 steaks to men who tipped poorly and treated servers like furniture. She didn't need to go back. Ever. She thought about that night, about Victor's question, about what happens when you assume someone's story ends where you stopped reading, about all the Serena Adamses still out there, working doubles, studying between shifts, building spreadsheets no one will ever see, waiting for a chance that might never come. Most won't get a moment like hers. The system isn't designed that way. She knew that. She'd lived that truth for 7 years. But sometimes the moment arrives, and when it does, you have to be ready. She'd been ready for 5 years. She just needed someone to ask her a question. Serena turned back to her terminal, opened her spreadsheet, added one final entry to Victor Hale's file. Prediction: the waitress doesn't know anything about stocks. Outcome: wrong. She smiled, saved the file, and got back to work.